Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the COASTER-net Dispatch. We've had some disheartening news here that we're going to talk a little bit about the ride accident at Adventureland on their Raft Rapids ride, and then talk a little bit about some of the other things that we've seen happen over the last few years and how this might affect other parks in the future. That we do know that some of the parks are pulling out the raft rides left and right. We know the Shoot the Chutes rides have been pulled out a lot at Six Flags parks. Water rides in general seem to be somewhat of a dying breed, that we've only seen a couple places install new water rides. That we'll talk about that too. But Jeff, first, why don't we talk about the accident that happened at Adventureland this past weekend, where it seems that it's hard to tell what happened in this situation. We think from the news stories that a boat capsized on their rapids ride. One person has died because of the injury sustained, whether that be drowning or impact. That's also hard to tell. And three others were injured. But
one critical and two minor is what they're saying right now, and the casualty and the major injury are both minors. We know that too.
Okay, well, that's terrible. And it just seems that we've seen accidents happen on these rapids rides as of late. A couple of years ago, we saw it happen down in Australia on the rapids ride at was it Gold Coast, I believe?
Yeah, I think it was called Thunder Rapids, or maybe is that one this one?
And that one was extremely bad. That one had to do with the conveyor, where the boat flipped and then people got trapped underneath the conveyor belt system, and it was pretty ugly. I believe that ride was taken out after that event as well. We there's a number of other accidents that happened. Even this ride at Adventureland had one other death associated with it, where a worker fell and injured himself and ultimately died from falling into the conveyor system or into the
it was the conveyor. Yeah.
So, I like you were saying, like, water rides are always a little bit unpredictable, right?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately it's part of what makes it fun a little bit, but I think it's also something that's really hard to test and predict for. We see injuries on these kind of rides in the past, but this is the first death that we're seeing in the US or North America. The major one that Andy just mentioned, that ride wasn't built by a reputable manufacturer. And there was one in England where a girl drowned, but it's kind of unclear how that happened, if it was part of the ride or maybe behavior. But this one, is different. It definitely seems to be the ride if something capsized. We have seen injuries on these kinds of rides in the past. I remember, I live near Hershey Park, so I remember Hershey Park used to have one of these, and they had an injury, also an Intamin raft ride, and they took theirs out. I feel like maybe the Kennywood one, because people got hurt on that a couple times too. I think that one's also Intamin. But the log flumes, the Shoot the Chutes, like you were saying, there's just seems to be a lot of these, especially because they're long-lasting rides. I mean, some of these rides, the big major building boom of these was in the 80s, I think, right?
Yeah. Late 80s, early 90s saw a large amount of these being built. And there's safety systems there where there's, seatbelts on the raft itself that supposedly they're able to drain the water very quickly out of these. A lot of them have reservoirs that are low lying that the water drains out. So your points, it drains out into the lake very quickly. So there's safety systems in place, but one, you have to recognize that there's a problem first. So there's the human element where there's cameras all over. There's, on these rides, you've seen, if you've ever been on one, that there's spotters sitting along the route. So that you can try and deal with drowning issues as quickly as you can. But then you have these other elements that, well, do you spot it quick enough, or is it so fast that there's nothing that can be done even with draining the water? It's funny that I was just walking through Great America the other day, and I snapped a few pictures, and their rapids ride has not opened. And what was also kind of sad about this event at Adventureland is supposedly the ride just opened like a week or two ago.
Yeah, apparently this happened on Saturday, July 3rd. And apparently on Friday, July 2nd, it was state inspected. So the state is standing by it. And they're saying that the ride was safe to operate, the day before. So either they've missed something, or like we discussed before, there was some sort of unpredictable nature with the ride that caused this accident, where it wasn't a malfunction, but just simply a fluke accident.
And so like I was walking by Six Flags Great America, they have not opened up their raft ride yet. I know Cedar Point has. I was at Cedar Point in June, and their raft ride was open. But I wonder if a lot of these parks are going to look at some of these recent accidents and seeing the age of these rides. You're talking, these things are 30 years old now. And you're still running the same systems. How much maintenance are you putting into these things? Probably a considerable amount, but is that enough to keep up with what's happening? I think the big question mark out there is, are a lot of these raft rides going to start closing, and we're going to see other things pop in? So, you look at what Silver Dollar City did, which I thought was really strange. What they did is they completely demolished the raft ride that they had, and then just built a whole brand new raft ride. So maybe parks know what the issues are with these, and they look at, these accidents, and they see what happened in Australia. They see what happened, with injuries over time. And maybe they're trying to fix them instead of, because Silver Dollar City invested a huge amount of money into Mystic River.
I think it was like $24 million, which is really significant.
Yeah. And if something goes wrong there, like there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. And last season wasn't a good return on investment for them. So, they're kind of starting now.
Yeah. And then the only other ones that I can think of, we all know the debacle that Shoot the Rapids was at Cedar Point, and Cedar Point got really lucky with their accident on Shoot the Rapids. And that was a mechanical failure. That was the boat did not engage the lift hill correctly, and then slid backwards and then toppled into the water back. It kind of flipped backwards into the water. And Cedar Point got really lucky because the ride ops on that ride were there quickly and were able to get the people out fairly quickly, and they all survived. But then you look at SeaWorld just put in Infinity Falls, and it seems like they're trying to up the ante on these raft rides. That just having the raft ride, now they're putting in, drops and elevator lifts and all this other technology. And like you were saying at the beginning, with the unpredictable nature of using water and what's happening, like I don't know, like is this a wise move?
I don't know. I'm sure that the more modern ones are probably better situated to deal with like that unpredictable nature, or even just to deal with like an e-stop or whatever that version would be for a water ride. But to me, my mind always goes back to like Colorado River Adventure, like, because I survived Action Park, where like the boats would get stuck, because like the water would spin it, they'd go bounce off, they get like stalled out, and then everybody would start crashing into each other. Now I know that that's a different kind of raft ride, but it kind of was like, it's that same kind of thing. That's not how it was intended to work. Like, it's just the way it ended up working.
Well, and when I think about like the new ones, and this is just from random thoughts, and you can disagree. It seems like the back, the seats are a little bit higher. It seems like they're more enclosed. That I know with Mystic River and with Infinity Falls, they both have netting in between the seats, so it's harder to exit from inside the boat. So if you wanted to jump out, you couldn't jump out into the water.
I think that is like aimed at guest behavior and not a function. Yeah.
So and then even if it flipped over, I don't know, are those seats high enough where it would keep you up out of the water for the amount of time that you would need? I don't know. Like the raft rides are very like intimidating. Like I remember watching the one at Six Flags St. Louis, because you get a really good view of the water there, because you can go to Mr. Freeze and you cross a bridge and you can watch the raft ride in front of you. And there's like points of it, like that water just looks deep, and it could just be, you know, I'm sure it's not. I've walked through Cornstalkers. Like it seems deep, it seems like, but it's moving fast, it's strong, and it's a force. And if you're, you know, if something happens that you're not expecting, like that it's still a force to be reckoned with there. But on to other ideas, because we've talked enough about accidents here, I think. And it got me thinking about like a place like Six Flags Great America. And if they don't reopen their raft ride, or say Cedar Point decides that, hey, Thunder Canyon opened up in '88, we're done with this now. These rides take up usually huge pieces of land.
Oh, yeah.
That you could put a whole lot of stuff down. Now, I'm not one to say, you know, hey, I hate, you know, whatever, but I can't tell you though. Well, I rode Infinity Falls just because it was new, but before that, it's been maybe a good decade since I've ridden a raft ride. Right? Do you ride these things?
The last one that I remember going on was at Magic Mountain, and that was the year that Tatsu opened. And I had a flip phone back then, you know, and it had a little thing in the middle to keep your stuff dry. And I remember like not wanting to go on because I didn't want to get my phone wet, and you know, peer pressure. It was before lunch too, so I didn't want it to ruin my lunch. But I put
who wants to eat while they're wet? I have a standing rule. I will not eat when I'm wet. Will not. Absolutely will not eat. I am not a barbarian. So go. Yeah.
That was just for you. Yeah. So I put that, you know, put the phone in there, and I was happy it had it. But since then, that has always been my first thought is I don't want to get my phone wet because I always have it. Yeah. But yeah, the more I see like these accidents and stuff like that, the more I'm like, you know, I don't really like those kind of rides anyway. I don't like want to walk around like with my sneakers all day either.
I don't want to be soaking wet all day. I don't want to, you know, put myself in a dangerous position where what's going to happen. Like, and the Cedar Point one, since it draws from the lake, that people don't know this, it actually draws from the lake. That fish,
that's a little extra coming.
Like fish have come out from the waterfalls into the boats before. No, thank you. I'll pass on all of that. And I will gladly take a wonderfully sized wood coaster in its spot. Like, let's be honest here, because like I don't see the attraction of it. I get it. People line up for it. It's usually kids lining up for it. Okay, you want to get soaking wet on a waterfall, but that's why we have water parks. Like, I think we're moving towards that positioning of, okay, we have water parks that do stuff, that have waterfalls. You know, there's no reason to have that in your theme park as well. And I know people love log flumes as well. I'm not, you know, I love Whitewater Landing. I like a good log flume, even though I walked past it 16 times at Great America this week. Never once did it cross my mind, maybe I should go ride that log flume. Didn't cross my mind at all. I just walk right past them because I don't want to have to get a locker and take off my shoes and walk around wet. I don't want to deal with any of that. So get rid of all the water rides as far as I'm concerned. Like, honestly.
Like heroines.
Yeah, get rid of them all. and put in nice rides. Put in nice wood. And here's the other thing. Okay, I'm going to go off a little bit here too. Here's the other thing. Have you ever been by a person who has just gotten off a water ride, decide to sit down on another ride, and then leave that seat soaking wet, where now, what the hell? What am I supposed to do here? Sit down in that guy's
puddle?
It's time. I think it's time for raft rides and log flumes, depending on how wet you get. Like, I don't understand this concept of you will get wet, you will get soaking wet. Why? Well, why do we have to get wet at all? Why can't we just float on the water? You know, wouldn't that be nice?
They just did that, didn't they?
Well, maybe. So it's just I'd much rather have basically any other ride in those positions.
I do have that nostalgia for the log flumes, but I still feel the same way about them.
It's like, I love to watch them. I'll sit there and watch them go down the hill. Like, I'll sit at lunch at Great America and sometimes sit over by like Vertical Velocity and watch the log flumes go down. When on Great Bear at Hershey Park in the queue line, you get that.
Coal Cracker's cool too. That one's a little different.
you
That
get
one's
that
like
wonderful
that one's like a
view
little canoe.
of the drop there. They're fun to watch. Actually, I do remember the last one I rode before Infinity Falls. The last log flume that I actually got on was the Jetliner or something like that at Six Flags Over Georgia. That was actually very fast and very good. And I think I did the one at Worlds of Fun too recently, within the last decade. But we're talking about like once every blue moon, I get the urge to ride a log flume, and ultimately, I think I'd rather ride anything else.
Yeah, I think the last log flume I went on was the one at Lake Capouns. I think it's like Sawmill River or something like that. But I need somebody to to push me into it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah,
Even if I think it's kind of a good idea by myself, I never go on them unless somebody else says, "All right, let's go."
I can be convinced for a log flume. There is very little that will convince me to get onto a raft ride at this point in my life. Like,
but that's the whole thing, that you may get wet is because they don't know what's going to happen.
right? So, well, hopefully we'll see what happens with these other parks. But condolences out to the people in all these accidents that we've talked about tonight. Always awful when something like this happens at a theme park. People go in there to have fun, and then of course, tragedy happens. And hopefully we see things in the future to try and take out some of the guesswork here, which I don't think is possible. Or like I said, maybe we'll just see a lot of these things disappear over the next few years, like we've seen with the Shoot the Chutes rides, which seem to be, to me, some of the more safer water rides, right? Are there a ton of accidents on the Shoot the Chutes rides? You don't really hear
No,
about
the
them.
only ones that I ever remember are like people getting hurt by the actual like splash. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like not being on the ride, but somehow being hurt by the splash, like
yeah,
falling down.
exactly.
But when these things happen, sometimes parks take notice and they start planning changes. So
Yeah,
you might not see it immediately, but before we went on, we were talking about the Sky Ride at Great Escapes, which is it's kind of like a ski lift kind of thing, and there's really nothing to keep you in except the fact that you don't want to fall out. And, in 2017, a teenage girl fell out of one. The day after, Lake Capouns closed theirs forever because I think that Jerry Brick, their general manager, made a statement basically like they reviewed their evac procedure and they realized going up the side of the mountain, it's not going to work well. So that was it. They realized they never had an accident and they cut it. They cut themselves a break on that one and made sure they never did.
Well, and that's part of the thing is getting rid of some of the headaches before they happen, and I think the water rides, and if you're taking out all the Shoot the Chutes rides, like, I think you have to start evaluating, some of these other rides that, even if they're kind of popular or historic or nostalgic, I think you really need to look at and say, hey, these things just don't fit within what we're trying to do here anymore. They're just too much of a wild card, I think, at some point. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep you updated on all the stuff going on. But as always, thank you for joining us here on the COASTER-net Dispatch. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Jeff Goodman from Long Island, New York.
Right on, right, Warriors.
Good night.